I can't really hear out of my right ear right now because I was taking a bath last night. And I just kept going under the water too. You
You
know
tried to
how I am
drown yourself.
with my full moon bath, so I can't hear out of one of my ears right now. So I
That
might be
sounds
breathing.
concerning. I mean, you kept going under the water.
Yeah, what was going on there?
Yeah.
So I did spiritual work, and which is funny because a lot of people, especially like in Sufism, don't believe you should do work in the bathroom because of certain energies. A lot of negative things when you release is in the bathroom. But I'm not. That's where my bathtub is. So I do a lot of past life regression work, and it requires water because water is a conductor. So
Okay.
that's what it is.
Okay. Okay.
Hmm.
I might try that. Does that work? Does that work for men, or is that just a female thing?
So because we all have feminine and masculine energy, I would say it probably works for both. Most of my clients are women.
Okay.
But yeah, I would totally believe, where our bodies are still made up of water, male and female. So yeah.
That's
Okay.
interesting. You know what? Me and Vash have had the conversation a lot about the masculine and feminine energies that are in men, and how a lot of men don't want to, they shy away from, like, don't tell me I got feminine energy. Like, how do y'all feel about that? Knowing that you do have some feminine energy.
Chris, you want to go first?
Yeah. Well, I don't know what like having feminine energy is as far as it, but I do know that we have to have some type of female traits inside of us because we have a part of the female chromosome, and we came from the female. We have female DNA inside of us as well as the men. I don't know. I know the masculinity level depends on more on your hormonal level as well. You know what I mean, as far as when it comes out in the physical way. But that's my take on it.
I would say the same thing about the. Oh man, yeah, I would say the same thing. It's according to your hormonal level, which one is displayed at the time. Because with men, our hormones actually, go back and forth sometimes also, and at some points we can display a sort of a slight level of femininity in certain ways. So I think that's what makes the difference. Where your hormones are at the time,
would you
and I
would you
think
would you say that femininity comes out like at an emotional level, or um, how is it displayed mostly from your point of view when it comes out?
definitely in an emotional level, definitely an emotional level. Yeah,
So I would just like to interject to say that femininity and feminine energy are not the same.
Okay.
hmm
Femininity is a physical manifestation in behavior. Feminine energy is kind of like your subtle body. It's very subtle. It's not necessarily an action, but how you process and perceive. So, like, feminine energy would be going with the flow of things, being able to pivot and flow. Femininity would be it's almost the hyperbolized version of the energy. So femininity, yes, I mean feminine energy, yes, going with the flow means that we are aware of emotion, that we observe emotion. Femininity, for lack of, sometimes English is hard for me. Femininity would be leading with emotion.
Okay.
gotcha.
So, so quick question: how do you, if you say they're on two different, they're not necessarily the same thing. How do you recognize feminine energy without it being some type of action associated with it?
But because we need both, right? I think I love this conversation and I'm glad we're having it, and not a T likes when me and the Bruja get kind of violent. but I like that, you know, like we're all on the same team, right? But we can't get violent. But you need the both, right? You need the masculine and the feminine. But in the patriarchal society that we live in, we've kind of villainized feminine energy. Oh, you feminine. Oh, you weak. So that is not feminine energy in any capacity. So I think when we look at what society has deemed feminine, I think it really goes back to just really learning and identifying and teaching what feminine energy is. You know, somebody may see a guy twisting and like, oh, that's feminine, right? The act of twisting is femininity, but the act of feeling your sensual self is feminine energy.
Okay.
So, you know what I'm saying? It's like they're connected, but they are not the same.
Okay, so I was getting ready to ask, aren't they connected? If wouldn't one have to go with the other? Like if you see a guy like that, wouldn't you say both? You know what I'm saying? Because you have to be feeling some type of energy to even act it out in that manner.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So the feminine behavior is stemmed from the feminine energy.
Energy.
Feminine energy does not necessarily correlate to
With
having to have a feminine.
Okay, I understand what you're saying now. Yeah.
Got you. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily have to. You don't necessarily have to act out in feminine behavior. Just because you have feminine energy.
Yes. So feminine energy may be really being aware of your sensual body. Right? But that doesn't mean you're going to be twisting down the street, you know.
So yeah, I would definitely say that, you know, men have that feminine energy. Then when you put it that way, yes, definitely. You know.
Yeah.
But you know, we don't always,
because she's able to, like, you know, the things, you know, us growing up the way we grew up and growing up as the men that we are, you know, everything is so masculine with us. And sometimes we need a woman like Vash to actually show us the other side and say, look,
exactly.
It's okay to say I have feminine energy. It doesn't make you weak. If anything, it makes you stronger to be able to embrace that side.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
I mean, we of course we grew up and we were taught to suppress it, you know, because it wasn't looked at as. And I only think because of what Vash said, I think that that's the only reason why we were taught to suppress it, so that in men it wouldn't show. You know, we wouldn't act it out. We wouldn't, like you said, the body language and you know, and some of the talk, like we wouldn't show it in those manners. Is the only reason why I think we were taught to suppress it as young men.
All right, and speaking on this, I want to put it on the flip side a little bit. How do women? What are ways that women may display their masculine energy?
Yeah. So T and I, like T is my best friend, y'all. Just
Which she don't want to get up in the morning. You could have woke her up. Call her right now and wake her up and tell her to get on here so you don't feel like you're getting trapped.
Come on, Terrell. Terrell.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah.
The audio was a little muffled. I'm sorry. I thought you said T. I didn't know
you were taking a bath last night too.
Yeah. No, that was my wife trying to hold me underwater long. You know what I mean?
We got stories about that too. People getting pulled underwater. That's another day. But so it's funny because we just had a conversation. So I moved to Atlanta and like I'm learning all of these words to identify people, right? Identify how they see themselves, how they. I was like, Fem, what? Oh my gosh. So I was recently told that I have a lot of masculine energy. And I present extremely feminine. If it's not pretty, I don't want no parts of it. I love soft. So it caught me off guard. But the conversation stemmed from, I was talking to a young lady who is in a same-sex relationship. And she was like, oh, and she put a yellow heart, not a red heart. And I put a red heart, so I made myself more vulnerable. And I was like, what? Like, I was like, girl, say what you mean. If she doesn't receive it, let it go. So I'm a type of woman. I don't do small talk.
Oh, you mean a text message? Yellow heart and red heart?
Yeah. It was like
What?
overly emotional, right? I was like, what the hell? And so I don't like talking on the phone. I don't do small talk. If you text me and you're not asking a question, or like, I'm not going to respond. Like, I'll look at your text. Okay. And I say what I need to say. I say how I feel. I'm very direct. My son's like, Mom, men don't like you because you're like super direct. Like, we can't handle it. So I'm very direct. And the young lady said that I was masculine because I was direct. So I guess one of the ways that we look at masculine energy is like linear, right? The goddesses are looked at circular, even in how they're depicted. I'm talking ancient goddesses. I'm not talking about Marvel hips, tiny waist. I'm talking about the ancient goddesses. They were thick and round and circular. But men are considered very linear. So I'm considered to have masculine energy because of my ability to be linear. And it's very important and it's very needed. Like men, I know a lot of neuroscientists have shown like how your brains work as opposed to women. Like you'll have on a computer 4 windows open, we'll have 30, right? But it allows you to have follow through, right?
That's why
Part
we
of
always ask y'all to do our homework for us and stuff like that.
we can do a million things, but we did it better. You did it more directly. We probably just did it better. But so masculine energy again is both are very needed. But when I present, even in my directness, it is soft, so the subtle energy is to the point. It is not leading with emotion, but it still doesn't have to present in a physical way that is, once again, let's identify and retell the story of what masculine and feminine is. Masculine energy isn't beating your chest. Most people that beat their chest don't even believe the reason they're beating their chest. They're presenting to just to convince you of something. That doesn't mean they're masculine.
I think it's an insecurity.
It's
Yeah.
an insecurity.
Most people that have to beat their chest is because they want to try to avoid confrontation as opposed to getting
Like a dog barking.
Yeah.
Like a dog barking.
Yeah, I
Exactly,
gotta scare you before you scare me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so both are needed. Like both are needed, and there are times where we'll operate in one energy more than we operate in others, and that's fine. For me, like I just prefer people who are open to the conversation, open to redefining and rediscovering what they both mean. Because if you live fully on one end of the spectrum, for me, it's just um, it's hard for me to communicate. So.
Mm.
I seen
Speaking
a
of,
study. Oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
I seen a study one time that I think I was reading up some. This was some years ago. I can't remember who exactly I was listening to, but they were talking about say in the case of like a woman, like a single mother that's raising a child, raising a male child, that they're chemically they develop more masculine traits because it's their body. It's hard to explain what they were talking about, but it's more like they develop more masculinity chemically and mentally to be able to teach their male child because of the lack of not having a man in the house, to so to say. You understand what I'm saying?
I can. I think, studies are really interesting
Mm-hmm.
because they can be manipulated. They leave out variables.
Thank you.
Yeah. So like this particular, maybe the group of single women that they looked at, what was the demographic, the financial background,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I'm saying? The woman who has no time to be in her softness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could see that. But just because you're a single mom Doesn't mean you don't have support. You're not living still a soft life. Like, if you're in the jungle, in the struggle, you gotta develop that armor. But every single mother isn't in that situation. So I would love to have seen all of the things, the variables, the financial background, the educational background, the support background that went into that.
The study was looking more at, of course, our community, the African American or the Black community, of course, was looking at that, and I thought it was interesting because it talked about, and it's interesting that we talked about energy. It talked about energy being something that produces or reproduces in a way that to balance things out. You understand what I'm saying? So, and if you look at everything has a duality, so you have to have a balance. So that's why I thought that was interesting, because it kind of almost tied into the same thing.
Rarely are
No.
things balanced, though. Rarely, very rarely. And we use that word a lot. I don't know if it's even something that we should seek. Everyone says seek balance. Seek harmony. In nature, if every animal, if there was the same amount of zebras to lions, that would not really be harmony.
That's true.
Right? So you have to seek balance. And so if they were saying, like, so even, and I'm not negating that study, I don't have enough information, but I do I'm leery sometimes of how studies, especially of our community, are presented, because now the narrative is the single mother is way more masculine, and they've been pushing that narrative on us. So we've been eating it, believing it, A lot of my clients are single mothers, and baby, we really, I don't really want to talk about them, but yeah, that's a narrative that we've been fed, and I really don't trust a lot. So
I get it.
I think the problem is that, like you said, with the whole balance and harmony thing, I think the problem is knowing how and when to use either. Having that control to know how and when to use either. And I think for men, it's hard for us dealing with females to know when to use that feminine energy, because that would bring understanding between the two.
That's right.
To learn how to kind of in that manner suppress your masculinity and bring out more of your feminine energy to understand. And then when we're dealing with one another as men, of course, it's completely masculine energy. But dealing with a female, I think sometimes when it comes to conversation, her feelings and things like that, we should dive more into our feminine energy in order to understand. And I think on her part, she should dive more into her masculine energy to understand a man. Just my opinion.
You know what? In saying that, so Vash, how would a woman dive into her masculine energy, and vice versa? How would a man dive into his feminine energy? Especially
so
if we're talking about like it, especially if we're like having an intense conversation or an argument, right? And the conversation is really a lot of times when you have a difference of opinions between man and woman, sometimes it's man brain and woman brain having this
Exactly.
argument.
Right.
And sometimes we have to understand, okay, if I can understand a little more what she's feeling, and if she can understand a little more what I'm feeling, then maybe we can, come to some common ground. So how do we get to that point?
you really want the answer?
We do.
Yes, please.
We
Really,
do.
you already know the answer. You already know the answer. You're just facilitating at this point. I love it. You got to know this answer.
What's
So,
the answer? Women are always right.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So, and I have to remember, my hairstylist has me reading this book called, I haven't started yet because I wanted to be angry about something. And she was like, you have to read The Course of Love because it'll let you know that you're separate from no one. I was like, I don't want to hear that shit. I want to be mad, and it wasn't even at a male, it was at a female, at a woman. So the thing is, you mentioned arguing. The only thing that argues is the ego. Get out your ego, right? I don't really believe in manipulating my energies for an outcome, because that's manipulation to a degree. I'm in a space, and I have to realize too that, like, I wasn't always in the space. Let me be clear. So I don't argue, because I don't have a point to prove to you. When I'm very strong in who I am, and we're having a conversation, arguing is emotionally driven. It is, I need you to see my way, my point, my, that's your ego. Lead with compassion. That's very big. Lead with compassion and see the other person. And the only time we can really see the other person is when we already feel seen and validated. When we're arguing and we're trying to push who we are, who our opinion, it's because we don't feel seen, we don't feel validated. That's when you argue. Otherwise, it's either facts. And so, like, I know when we huff, we think, oh, arguing is feminine, it's none of that. Let your ego out of it. And when you're talking about understanding another sex and how they operate, again, it's leading with compassion, looking at what is real, and letting the rest of that go. There is no control. And when we're looking for control, again, that's the ego trying to protect itself. Oh, when I control things, I'm safe. I know what the outcome, I can guide the outcome of this. That's an ego-driven need. That is a masculine trait, needing to know the outcome. One of the divine feminine traits is what we call a gnosis, where you don't know in your mind, you feel in your body. So I encourage people to balance, to not change who you are from situation to situation. And it's funny because, you never know, once you really are leading in this way, who's watching you. Something happened at work. So I one of my yoga classes, I'm a fitness director, and they kept interrupting one of my teachers' yoga classes. And I got really upset because I've been very clear. And so I made sure everybody know, hey, I am upset. I have been very clear about this. And so one of the girls watching, she said, I could tell you were angry, but you never stepped out of who you were. Stay with the facts. Stay out of the needing to control. That's what arguing and stuff is about. And so I don't think that you need to go more into your feminine to understand somebody. I think once you go within and start understanding your feminine and your masculine in yourself, it'll give you more of the ability, more of the compassion, more of the insight to just see everyone as who they are.
That's interesting. I'm gonna try that, and I'm gonna make sure that I get my wife to listen back on this so she can implement some of that into her. Because when she argues, she got a sword on her tongue. You know what I mean? And women they know the right buttons to push to, to elevate you to a certain level, to where we can't stop arguing. Like, even when I say I try to be a lot transparent on a lot of things that I talk about. And I'll try to talk about a lot of things that I've been through or that I experienced. So, like, when I'm arguing with ladies or anything like that, or with a lady or with my wife or anything like that, it becomes that last word type of thing. It all becomes that, even if I say, okay, I get it, I understand, you know what I mean? Oh, you're just saying you understand because you want to end the argument and you don't want to argue it. That could be part of the reason. But yes, I'm telling you I understand. So it's like, even when I'm trying to end the argument, it's always that last word thing. And it's always like, okay, yeah, you understand, blah, 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 blah. And it's always something at the end that's going to cause another reaction. And then it keeps
you could just say okay, and to them okay means you told them to shut up, or
exactly.
It's like you just okay, I get it. You know, oh, you just want me to stop talking. Oh, you just want me to like.
But
I
yeah,
was
I do
treading
want you to
real
stop
quietly
talking.
up over here. I'm treading quietly on those.
Yes, stop talking, please. Let's just leave it alone.
when when it actually, when actually, if I want you to stop talking, I'm just gonna say stop talking.
That's
Me,
dangerous.
I'm just gonna say I'm that direct. Shut up. Stop talking.
You're not my daddy. Don't tell me to shut up. You're not my
You
daddy. You're
see,
not you know what I mean? That's just gonna go to a whole nother energy.
yeah,
You know what
but
I
I'm saying it seems like that if you've been with them long enough, they should know that you're that direct. That if you wanted them to stop talking, you would just say stop talking. But I'm saying okay, and this is something that I've explained. Like, no, me saying okay is me saying just okay, I understand, or
mean?
I'm listening, I hear you. Now give me time to go absorb it, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and really, get it, really get it.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
it doesn't. Even though you've explained that,
When you say
it seems like they forget.
oh,
Huh?
when you
I'm
say
sorry.
that, what is the response? Because that seems very
The
um
same. The same.
Direct.
The response is the same. The response is the same. For some reason, the response is the same, and it's like, although you've explained that, next argument, it's still the same thing. Like, damn, you didn't hear what I said last argument. Like when I say okay, I'm saying give me a chance now to go sit on it, and really absorb it, to really understand. And if you don't understand something that I'm saying, and you take it in a manner where you think I'm telling you to be quiet or shut up, I just want to end the argument. Why don't you just ask what I mean? Or if you think I'm saying something to demean you or anything like that, why don't you just ask instead of assuming and then going off of that and using it as a trigger word and then using it against me? Why don't you just ask what I mean? I've said these things, and then next argument, it's the same thing. It's the same problem. It's the same issue. And it's like, damn, you don't hear nothing I say, do you?
so a lot of times, and I'm speaking for me, for self, but for all people, um, and we project. We project how we see ourselves. Sometimes that's how we think someone else is seeing us.
Mm.
So we think that you may have been demeaning or you're thinking something demeaning is a lot about the reflection of maybe it could be, here we go with these trendy words, but trauma of previous relationships when someone spoke this way to me. This is how they felt, or this is what happened, and this is why it made me feel this way. And we carry that with us. And that requires an amount of inner work to release. And it requires work. It requires so much work. Recently I was in line in a Starbucks with a friend of a friend, a male friend, and this lady skipped us because we were engulfed in conversation, and this lady skipped us, and he was like, she skipped us in Starbucks in a grocery store. Who gives a shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was like,
Mm.
okay. So a big old argument ensued between the two of them. I mean, they were talking about going to their cars, shooting each other,
Oh wow.
Goodness.
and and
Goodness.
so Atlanta is a different animal as far as the aggression you can have. But he said to me, she disrespected you. That's why I did that. I said, no, she didn't. Because I don't internalize and project. I try not to. Let me say I'm not some perfect being. But he projected instead of viewing it as someone just standing in line. The hurt or the trauma from someone disrespecting him now shows up in all these small situations, and so we all do that. But once you really do the inner work to be validated and see yourself and not take other people's actions as a reflection upon you, you'll see a lot of that lesson.
That's also a form of insecurity as well.
It
Not
is.
saying that that person itself was insecure, but that's also a form of insecurity, you know. And as men, we all fell into that line of, you know what I mean, that line of emotional, just having to feel disrespected because we could have been going through something that day, or like you said, it could be some past trauma to feel like we always feel the need to prove ourselves. As far, you know, when we feel, so we look for any type of reason to prove ourselves to
Right.
someone else.
And that's the same thing in the argument with the woman, the sister who feels you're being demeaning. Like all of us, when one of the most freeing lessons for me was realizing that how a person behaved was not a reflection of me. It was it had nothing to do with me. You're raised differently, you have different feelings, you're hungry at a certain time, you're not hungry at a certain, all that is about you. Now that's not to say I have to tolerate it, but it's not a reflection of me. And so I found that when we, one of the litmus tests of when we all of knowing how much you project what another person does onto yourself is when you're driving.
Hmm.
When the person cuts you off, how do you feel?
Oh shit! I'm a gangster on the road. I'm telling you,
Why you cut me off? It's
if
about
some
you.
people hear some of the things that I say to them when I'm driving, they're gonna want to get out of the car and shoot me for real. Because everybody knows I'm talking about your mama and everybody. You know.
Yeah, I
So,
feel disrespected.
exactly.
See?
I turn on certain songs just to make me even more mad. I got a
Yeah.
whole
I
play.
feel disrespected. I drive a truck that's on a 6-inch lip with big ass wheels on it. Should nobody cut me off? I feel disrespected.
I know, right? So that to me, that's a litmus test. So when
Mhm.
you can look and say, like somebody right now, if I go to the grocery store and they speak to me, I can't hear out the right side of my face right now. So now it's, oh, that bougie bitch or whatever, you know. Instead of having compassion, when I first moved to Atlanta, y'all gonna get a lot of this. I've only been here a year and a half. These people drive so crazy
They
that
do.
I told my husband we had to move because I used to cry when I got on the highway. I used to have to
I'm
bawl.
there all the time. They do.
Yeah. But when I realized, so we moved and there was a back road, no highway, but people still just running red lights. And I was just like, what the hell? When I realized that these people aren't present in their lives, right? They're in the next moment. I got to get there, or whatever. They're not present. Like my heart opened up so much and I felt so much compassion that now I'm just like, oh my gosh, you needed to get over that bad. Okay. Okay. It's not about fucking me. It's about what they're going through. It's about how they
Hmm.
learned what tools they got to get through it.
So, quick question: in a relationship, though, how do you deal with that? When you're dealing with a person like that, how do you deal with it?
Realizing I'm gonna read this book that reminds me that we are all not separate. Ugh. 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 But again, by going within me, by leading, and I can only change my behavior. I will say that when you begin these practices, the people around you will change. Like because now they have more tools and more resources and they feel compassion is an energy. You feel the compassion and we can
Thank
all
you.
operate, and it's not just some magic switch. We can have the conversations about it. What are we really talking about? Why are we even arguing? I'm gonna say what this is, but my family knows at this point now. I'd be like, Luke, that's a blue pencil. He'd be like, it's purple. It's blue. It's purple. Okay, that's your reality. I'm gonna let that go. I don't need to prove to you it's blue. It's gonna be what color you need it to be. Right. But I think, again, remember if you're leading with compassion. That's the first step. That is the first step. Are you leading with compassion or are you leading with your ego?
Cool.
So you got
So,
it's really
but
something you have to start with you. When dealing with other people, and they may be completely irrational or just out of line, but at that moment you have to understand this is not so much about me. This is about you. Everything that you're saying to me, So you're responsible for the shots that you take at me. I'm responsible for how they land.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Ooh.
I'm responsible for how I respond to
Respond.
how I have allowed them to land. Um, I remember I was working at a bank one time, and this bank was inside of a grocery store, and I had told my manager that there was this one assistant manager that I couldn't stand, and I told my manager, I said, don't schedule me and her in the morning time together because in the morning it's only two people that open the branch. I said, and I don't want to be there alone with her. Well, I got to work one day and she's there, and I'm pissed off. I'm like, man. So I get there, and I'm sitting there. Now at this point, I had been there longer than everybody else at the bank. I had trained the entire bank. I mean, the entire branch. I should have been a manager, but there was a bunch of bullshit that was going on, and they just wouldn't promote me. But so I got a chip on my shoulder, right? So one day I'm sitting there. It's just me and her there. I had to use the bathroom. So remember, I said it was inside a Shoppers Food Warehouse, the grocery store. I had to walk down this long aisle to go to the bathroom, right? So I get up and I'm like, I'll be back, and I start walking, and she says, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'll be back." She said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'll be back." She said, "Where are you going?" I said, "To the bathroom. I'll be back." So as I'm walking off, she said, "That's all I wanted to know." Whatever. So as I started walking off, this customer walks up and he says, "Hey, young brother, you got to let him know where you're going." I said, "No, I don't." He said, "Yes, you do." I said, "She's trying to pull rank." I said, "When the other manager is here, I get up and I go and come as I please. Nobody questions me. Me and her don't get along. She's trying to pull rank right now. So, no, I don't have to say anything to her." He said, "Listen to what I'm saying to you." He said, "If you have complete control over yourself first, you can control anything and everything around you." And I said, "All right, bro." And I started walking off. And about I took 3 steps before it hit me what he was saying. That regardless of what everybody else is doing or saying, as long as I control me, I am still in control of a
Mm-hmm.
person who may be out of control.
Exactly.
And it made all the sense in the world to me. So I started even in the relationship that I was in. It was a pretty bad relationship at the time. It was always constant arguing. And I went back and I applied that to my relationship as well. And everything changed. Everything changed. I just had to control me. That's it. Even with arguments, if you want to go there, I don't have to go there. All I got to do is control me. And I realized when I calm down, you calm down too.
Yeah. I last argument. Here's what I did. She went to ranting and raving. I didn't respond at all. This went on for a whole hour. I lie to you not. I didn't respond at all. And you just not gonna say nothing. I didn't say anything. And I think at some point she just realized that she was only arguing with herself at that point. Because it was you couldn't. I wasn't gonna give you any ammo. I'm not giving you that. I just shut my mouth and let her rant and rave. And she said plenty of trigger words. I just took it. And I think at some point in time she just realized she was just arguing with herself. And
Hmm.
decided to stop. But I just didn't say anything because I'm not going to give you the ammo. I'm not going to give you a reason to whatever I say to find a way to flip it and turn it around on me and make me the problem. Over what's wrong with you. And for me, that worked. Like just don't let them get it off the chest. Don't. I'm not going to say a word. Just let them get it off. And I guess when at some point they'll realize that it's pointless. The whole argument is pointless.
So my question becomes, because I believe in very direct communication. I mean, even at work, like I'm like, you guys got to learn how to, because communication is based, language is to get an idea across, to solve problems. So when we talk about these arguments, are we talking about these arguments like somebody came in late, or how are we going to spend this $1,000? Like, so, definitely I understand making a safe space for yourself in it, but are there anything being resolved by needing to communicate, right? Because sometimes, definitely when it's just like some I can't I don't even understand like the type of arguments like of just I'm just yelling and I don't like you or trying to hurt you. Like that's beyond me. But I do understand that when we have a difference of opinion, we got to make a decision. Like, how are you guys still getting to that and through that from an argument? Because you gotta, if it's like I said, if it's just you get on my nerves type of argument, but when you're trying to
Hmm.
solve something, you gotta solve for it. You can check out temporarily, but how do you come
Well,
back?
in some cases, just agree to disagree.
Okay.
That's it. That's as far as you
You're
can
not
get
trying to
sometimes.
solve something at that point.
No, just agree to disagree. Like in some cases, but if you're trying to solve something, it definitely takes conversation and real conversation, not an argument, but conversation. You know, and not a tit for tat thing. Real conversation.
Got it.
Let's sit down and let's solve this this uh this
Got it.
problem.
Let
But
me
a lot
and
of times,
what Terrell said, you said that's really true, and I find, I had a client and our first couple of sessions were via the phone. And I had been doing work with her to see herself. We were doing mirror work. She had to look in the mirror and have conversations. And so when she finally came to see me in person, I was just like, wow, your energy has fully changed. Like, who are you right now? And she told me that the work we had done changed how she interacted with her husband. And that whenever, these, even his energy, he became kind of like maybe the argumentative one, but her response was so different that he began to change. So
Hmm.
her healing began to have an effect on his healing, right? So that
mm,
I think Terrell said in a more masculine way, I control myself, so I control all the situation. But the energy that comes out when you start doing your own work begins to have an
mhm,
effect on everybody, on everyone around you. So yeah, I'm going into the esoteric, but it affects your children. It starts to heal your DNA. So as
mm,
you're changing your DNA, you're changing your bloodline.
Hmm.
How you respond to emotional stimuli affects the chemicals in your body, right? We say, oh, my family has heart disease, it runs in our family. That's because your family has been passing down a traumatic response to stimuli. Change
mm.
that. And
And
so,
and they've been passing down that pork chop, that fried pork chop recipe as well. You know what I mean? I'm
yeah,
sorry. Go ahead. I'm
no,
sorry. Go
you're
ahead.
so right. You're so right. But it's also, they did a study on I know you guys probably heard about the study on the mice where generation A of mice, right? They had them where they would smell this essential oil or whatever, or scent. And every time these mice smelled this lavender scent, they would give them an electric shock, right? So now at the point where every time these mice smelled this scent, they would just panic because they felt they were going to get this shock.
Hmm.
So that's generation A. Generation B, their children, they never did the shock smell treatment. They didn't do anything. So they were just like the standard in it. Generation C, their grandchildren, right? The scientists would put the lavender scent or whatever scent it was in front of Generation C. They've never been a part of this experiment. Their parents had never been a part of the experiment. Their grandparents had. Every time they smelt this scent, they would panic.
Wow.
The mice that
Mm.
came
Wow.
from
Wow.
Generation A. All other mice had no response to this scent. Only the descendants of Generation A would smell this scent and go crazy. That's how we pass traumatic experience, but we have the ability to change it. We do. And even I know, like T knows, I go really esoteric. I go kind of spiritual and um, neurogenetics based, but it all, we're not taught this stuff. We're not taught this stuff because we're not taught to be well, because capitalistic society really only does well off of people who aren't fully well, who aren't fully empowered. So we're not really taught this stuff. I just taught myself.
In fact, we're taught the opposite because,
Yeah.
like you said, this capitalistic society, there's so much money in trauma.
So much money and being unwell.
Hmm.
So much money.
Yep.
And so when I taught
Yeah.
my son the
Yep.
other day, my son is an energy reader. He's 9 years old, reads energy amazing. I can be having a conversation with him and he'll be like, why are you yelling at me? And I'm like, I'm not yelling. He's like, yeah, but you are in your head. And I'm like, get out of it. But what I told him, yeah, that's Luke. But when adults yell, because he's like, well, when adults yell, do they still love us? And I was like, when someone yells at you, that has nothing to do with you. That has to do with the fact that they have a limited resource on expression. And I want him to understand early not to be taking that on, because that makes you unwell as well. Right.
I want to offer some pushback on something.
Okay.
Just something real fast. Because with the yelling thing, I yell at my kids a lot. And I feel like sometimes when I speak to them in a more subtle way or more humble way, they don't get it. You know what I mean? It could be because they're used to me expressing it in a certain type of way or anything like that. And I'm going to do an experiment one day, and I'm going to yell to them, and I'm going to be like, look, I'm going to give you this $200 fucking, and you better take it and do what the fuck you want with it and see how they take it. Do you think that they will still take that in a way of like, damn, dad is yelling at me? Do he love me or anything like that? I don't think so. I think it just comes down to what a person believes in and what they want to do and what they don't want to do in their choice and how they want to receive something. You understand what I'm saying? I can yell to them that I'm going to give you this fucking $500 and I don't want to hear shit else from you or anything like that. You think they're going to take that as, oh, dad doesn't love me or anything like that? No, they're going to take that $500 and say that dad must love the shit out of me because he just gave me $500.
Try that experiment with
and
I have to excuse, like, so how I raise my kid is not right or wrong. And I'm not saying that, but he's not accustomed to yelling. But
Okay.
I did have to teach him because people do yell,
Yeah.
and not to absorb that either way. But I don't do yelling because it does change your body chemicals, right? I'm a very holistic healer. I don't want to be unwell, right? I don't want high blood pressure. I don't want cholesterol. I don't want cortisol in my body. So that's a choice of mine. And now we're talking about two different types of, and I got 3 kids. So the older 2 would tell you she didn't raise us like this, right? So let me be very clear and honest. But your kids, they've gotten an adjustment. They are adapted to how you talk to them, right? For us, because I don't yell, for him, it's like, wait a minute, but other adults do. He's in school and the teacher got 20 kids, and he's like, I'm having to teach him beyond my way. Your children may have to learn. Like, I remember I heard a couple say one of them had grown up never yelling or arguing, and the partner grew up in a house of Italians yelling. They got married, and the one who had never heard arguing was like, the first time they had an argument, she was like, do you want a divorce? Like, oh my God, is this over? So each person is going to have to learn how other people react, because children internalize, right? But neither is right or wrong. I just know for me, yelling isn't, and I don't have to, because like I said, now my kid looks at me in my eyes, he's like, oh, I know what you're going through right now. So everybody's different. It's no right or wrong.
I'm a yeller. I'm working on it though. What I've learned to do is, if I have to raise my voice at my son, what I do is I come back, afterwards, and I explain to him that I do love him, and I do care about him, and I want him to do better.
Right.
And I'll try better next time so that I won't yell. I let him know.
If my dad's name was Gladiator, he would never have to yell at me ever.
Terrell knows this. Listen, Terrell knows this.
That would be enough for me. You know what I mean?
That's the only dude that's not afraid of me. That's my challenge. Him.
Yo,
Like that dude. My son.
My fist scared of his phone. Yo.
My 7-year-old is just like, man, sometimes I'll be like, hey man, do you love me? Like, bro, yeah. Well, man, why you don't listen to me? Like, why you don't do nothing? I say, you don't care. I have to tell him that sometimes. Like, bro, what is the problem? Like,
Yeah.
He feels his love. He feels that love. He know you love him.
I know he do. I know he do.
Sure. Yeah, I know, like, one of my spiritual mothers even be like, Vashti. I'd be like, my husband raised his voice at my baby. And she'd be like, Vashti, you got to let the men raise the men, So I just always challenge people to find the intention in their words and their actions. What is your intention? And if you feel good about your intention, then okay. If your intention has purpose, okay. But don't just be yelling and beating and all this stuff just because you don't know how to control yourself. Just because your boss got on your damn nerves and you can't bring it down. But if there's intention with your words, with your tone,
Yeah, and sometimes you have to explain your intentions because they might not always take it as love or take it as criticism or whatever. So you have to explain your intentions sometimes also.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm actually very calm. I communicate with my son, with Terrell. So, but it scares him because he says, Daddy, when you start talking to me, he says, when you say, Terrell, look, I need to talk to you about something. He said, I would rather mom scream at me than for you to get that voice. He said, because he said that voice is so calm. It's almost like a calm before a potential storm.
Yeah.
He's waiting for the storm. He's waiting for the storm. But what it also has done is it has put him in a position where he's like, I don't like disappointing you. I absolutely hate it. And it was the same, like my father never spanked me. He never spanked me. And my mother rarely spanked me, but I really didn't do too much as a kid anyway. But I would rather my mother spank me than my father say to me, "I need to talk to you." And so I've just parented the same way that my father did. Like I spanked her. I can count on one hand how many times I spanked him. And then I was like, you know what? This don't work for me. Also, I'm gonna be honest with you. I got a little too soft with it. I was like, I hate it. I hate it. It would crush me when I spanked him. But I found it to be more effective when I just sat there and I talked to him. And it started to scare him. He was like, I would much rather mom spank me or scream at me than for you to have one of those talks. The other thing is when I start talking, I don't stop talking. So it's like, let me hour-long speech.
That's probably why it was worse than the spanking, because they don't like to sit there. They don't like the lectures, boy.
That was my mom.
When I was a kid, I wanted that ass whooping and let me go. Let me go back.
Yeah, just go and get it over with, mom.
But it didn't really work. It didn't really work because nothing internal had been really thought about. Like I know so many kids that got beat down and was going to jail, stealing, fighting at school. Like the beating didn't do anything for them. But
I was that one. I got used to it.
Yeah, you get used to it, and there's no inner reflection. But when you're somebody, when you really see that you've disappointed of someone who means a lot to you, which means you also disappointed yourself. Now you got to do some internal reflection and work, and you may be 9, 10, 11. You don't see it as that, but that's what it is. And so, yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes that aggression, and that's the other thing, you have to actually know the child that you're dealing with and how they're going to respond to things, because sometimes aggression begets aggression. With some kids, they get the point and they're like, all right, this is discipline. I'm not going to continue doing the things that got me in this position. But with some children, you're teaching them to be aggressive. That's why you got to know the kid that you're dealing with.
Yep.
That can be a two-way street, because we've all been in the supermarket and we've seen those children that when their mother tell them to be quiet or put something back, and they're chasing them all over the supermarket, yelling and screaming, hollering and stuff like that. And they're just trying to say it all subtle and nicely or anything like that. And you yourself just want to be like, look, sit your ass down and shut the fuck. I mean, get in that goddamn car and shut the hell up. You understand what I'm saying? Because I've never had none of my children react like that because they know how I am and how, you know, how I lay down the law. You understand what I'm saying? So you can fall into a false sense of security when you come to not using aggression is needed in some instances. To be honest, you can't always. It's needed.
I think it's definitely,
especially with dealing with children and adolescent minds. It's definitely needed.
I think it's definitely needed when keeping kids safe. You know, and I'm just giving another perspective. Again, I say I don't really have opinions. I just have experience. If I don't have no experience with something, I don't have an opinion on it.
Exactly.
I have found, so with my youngest child, I don't, you know, it almost bothered me that he never really showed out. Like, I'm like, yo, you know, he now, you know, he's an incredible basketball player. He's the point guard. So he has assertiveness. So we're not even worried about that. But I never had issues where he fell out and I never, you know, I popped him one time, like, and I said, I will never do this again because I felt like I was dehumanizing him. Like, why am I trying to hurt you? You came from me. But what I found with children is just because you don't yell or you don't whoop does not mean you do not create boundaries and structure. So the what you just described, oh, Jimmy, you know, sit, and Jimmy smacking her in the face. She has not created any boundaries, any structure for that child, right? You don't have to go from one extreme to the other. Another thing I found, you know, when you actually, I've told some moms who are like, oh my God, when I get home, I just can't, and I'm this and I'm that, you know, and they don't really feel, and their children are having meltdowns, because I've actually started working with neurodivergent children. Neurodivergent children get around me, and because I create a space for them that has boundaries, they tend to behave in a fully different way than they behave in other areas. Like, but what I always said, moms, dads, whoever, when you get home from work, 30 minutes, put your phone away, turn the TV off, get on the floor, play with your kid, give them the attention for 30 minutes. Nobody else gets your attention. And I promise you, the rest of the night, you can do whatever the hell you need to do, because your kid has been seen, has been validated, and has had some structure. So please don't think that because you don't yell, you don't whoop, that means that you have to be a pushover. Not at all. I've never, I mean, other than sometimes I think a kid should be exploring, right? But I've never had an issue with a kid being fully disrespectful just because I don't whoop them.
Let me ask you a question. Has your children's fathers always been in their lives?
Yes.
Because that makes a big difference when it comes to, you know, respect and things of that nature. You know, a lot of kids didn't grow up with that, so they only have their mother, who may have been in a household without their father. You understand what I'm saying? And that's another thing that may have trickled down from generation to generation. How does that tie into things as far as with disciplining your child in?
Can you ask more specific, more specific?
Meaning, like, what can a single mother do, or single father at that? Because, you know, like I said, it goes back to balance. You know, I was a single father for a long time, and I knew that my children reacted differently when there was a woman around. You understand what I'm saying? Because they had more of a balance, and they had someone that was going to dress the wound up a little better. You know, you understand what I'm saying? Or someone who was going to. I was kind of harsh on my children. They seem like they don't realize it to this day because they actually appreciate it. But I was told that I was a little more harsh on my children, where I stopped spanking them and things of that nature, and I started putting them in push-up position. I started making them do push-ups. I started making them get on the wall and, you know, things of that nature, and other ways to discipline them, because they were kind of chaotic in school and things of that nature. At home, they were perfect because they knew the type of discipline that I instilled on them at home. But in school, it was a whole different thing. But I noticed that when there was a woman around, that their character and their demeanor, everything was totally different. they were a little more balanced as far as everything, because I didn't have to be as harsh on them, or I didn't have to discipline them as much. You know, they acted totally different when it came to that. So how does, as a single father or a single mother, deal with not having that balance in the household as far as discipline, specifically single mothers? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think, we talked about it in the beginning, when you seek the balance within you, right? When you know how to lead with the feminine energy, when you know when it's time to lead with the more masculine energy, that balance.
You're talking about feminine energy to maybe a single mother that has 5 boys.
Okay, so we're talking about reactive, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I think in this country is we're now reacting to disease, and disease meaning dis-ease, right? So this is reactionary. Reactionary drives me nuts, because I worked in the system where we were raising money for schools to fix these schools and charter schools, and I'm like, we're reactionary at this point. You got to go back a lot of steps. Instead of when women get pregnant in this country, allowing them a year to be off to raise their kids, right? To connect with their kids, right? We need to go all the way back to there, because that's where it already starts getting fucked up, right? When you have a baby and you got to be to work in 2 weeks because you don't have no maternity leave, right? Now you ain't connected to your baby. Now your baby ain't getting breast milk. There's so many issues that lead to that single woman with 5 kids who's pulling her hair out, right? Okay. So a lot, I can't really sit here and give a diagnosis and a prescription, because the lot is, I don't know what her work schedule is. I don't know what her support system is. I don't know but a lot of it, the woman who came to me recently with her, honestly, so I can't help it. This is what my daily work is, spiritual healing. When she came to me, I didn't know anything about her 4-year-old son who she was thinking had ADHD. All I know is when she came to me, I felt chaotic energy. And I said, it's okay. My son is neurodivergent too. She had mentioned her son. So my Luke is neurodivergent, but because I saw it very early with the way he self-soothed. So this is a kind of tapping. He always had to have things in his hands. I said, okay, this kid, my son is neurodivergent. I didn't say it to anybody else. I just addressed him where he was. So he never felt different. He goes to one of the top schools in the country now, and nobody will say he's neurodivergent because he's been given the tools to deal with it. But this woman comes, and I'm like, she's like, oh my God, how did you know? He's so chaotic. And I said, he's chaotic right now because you're fucking chaotic. You are chaotic. You have got to get your energy together. You have got to, as the adult, get the resources and tools to rationally and emotionally give him the space to be safe and okay. She brought him to me to meet, because she's sending me these videos. He's speaking, ancient language. She brought him to me to meet. First time, 3 or 4. So he had gotten in trouble at school, right? So she says to me, so when I saw him, I said, how was your day? And she said, oh, he had a bad day because, he bit somebody or whatever. I said, well, you don't get to determine whether his day was bad or good. He does. So I didn't ask you, but okay. So I gave this child.
Sounds so familiar.
So we're in, right? So we're in it. So now you're telling him who he is. So we're in a space. And I said to him, you can run if you want. This is a big space. The fact that I gave him the space and the okay that if he needed to, now he didn't need to, because now he's not repressing himself. So then, she began to notice. So this is a 3 or 4-year-old child. I'm sitting here talking to him for 35, 40 minutes. He has not moved. He is engaged. And she said to me, Vashti, I have never seen him stand in place this long in my life. And she said she noticed he had started doing his fingers like this. She said, Vashti, I noticed. So I'm neurodivergent. She said, when you've been talking to me, not when he's around, you tap as well. So I'm saying that to say, you, as Terrell said, you create the energy and the space. You cannot expect 5 little kids to manage their own energy when you're the leader and you're all over the place. When you are chaotic, you take your chaos everywhere with you. So whatever that looks like, that healing journey for you, and that's why in this space that I work in, I'm never jealous when another healer gets all this business or whatever. I don't like social media, because you know what? If every goddamn Black person in the world became a healer right now, we still wouldn't have enough. Because this is work that has to be done, to be taken seriously. I know people laugh at us. Oh, I follow the moon, I do this. But really what I'm doing is giving adults the place to heal and create a world so that their kids can at least have a fighting chance. So the woman with the 5 kids, how to have a teach her or help her with guiding these children, she has to go within. And going within is tough as shit. You have 5 kids, 5 different daddies. You know how much you're judging yourself because everybody's judging you. So you will, you know what? You say, fuck it, I'm not even going to go within because you have so much shame that everybody's pushing on you. That's the work I do.
Okay.
How to release that shit. So you can.
So how does a male come to you? I know you said you have a lot of female clients. How does a male come to you to seek healing? Like how does a male get healing? Like because we can all use them sometimes. You know, we're all jaded at some point in time, especially growing up in the neighborhoods that we grew up in and dealing with a lot of things that we have to, deal with. How does a male get that healing from you? Like what are some steps or what are some principles or some things that you give that male to help us heal?
And and you said sometimes we all deserve it all the time. We deserve it. You guys, you carry so much. A lot of that is self-imposed, but you carry so much. Oh my gosh. So T and I came together because one day you couldn't get, I'm transparent, if you have to edit, you couldn't get into your therapy session. And he called me. He was like, hey, we've been following each other. And I was hey,
I got kicked out. I got kicked out of group therapy.
That makes sense.
Jesus Christ.
Me too. Me too. That makes sense. Because we're the challengers.
Right.
We challenge that shit. We don't just sit there and just fake it till you make it. Exactly. We're not the fake it till you make it. We challenge that shit. That's why.
And so for me, the intention behind the challenging is always curious to me, right? Are you just trying to argue, or are you really trying to seek something? Now,
we're trying to seek something. We're trying to understand. We're trying to seek something.
Exactly.
So we're the why. We're the why this, who, what, when, what. We're those.
That's how I was in church. That's how I was in church. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You challenge everything. I just don't go on what somebody says.
Yeah.
Nope.
So I love that. But so for me, for the longest, I did not take male clients because the only, and I'm learning that I have to see that I'm not separate, but the only male clients I would take were ones who had a very, whether they were aware of it or not, but a harmonious feminine energy. Terrell has a harmonious feminine energy.
Oh shit.
I didn't mean to laugh. But no,
if you had said that with all the fellas here on our podcast, we would have went crazy on them.
No, not me.
That's why I don't take men clients.
I get it though. Me and Terrell have a lot of conversations. We have these type of conversations all the time. So I get it. Yeah. And he does. He definitely does.
He does. He's a nurturer.
Mm-hmm.
He can listen to his emotion without judging himself, but I do now have one serious male client, but what happened was he surrendered. And so that is a way of not being in control. So many men, I find, because the patriarchal system has been just pushed down on y'all, it's oppressing y'all, especially Black men. It's been pushed down on y'all so much that you're living like your realities aren't always sensible. And so it's just, for me personally, I'm working on myself to take more men clients, but men have an incredible ability to self-preserve, right? And so they will build a castle in their head to preserve themselves. Women generally, we don't self-preserve, right? We're giving everybody every damn thing, and dudes don't love us, and we're throwing our hearts at them. So we don't, so we surrender easily. We're like, girl, I can't anymore. Men tend to self-preserve so much that the conversations we have, I'm like, we're not having a real conversation right now. You're protecting yourself.
Do you think that that is attributed to a male's, or maybe the male clients that you had, inability to be in submittance to a woman?
I think it's the inability. Oh Lord, Terrell, he brought up that word.
Because I brought that up because I think in order to have, because I think
why is that such a? Why is that? I gotta get closer to the camera. Why is that such a dirty word?
That's the end all be all when it comes to male and female relationships. You know what I mean? Or interaction itself. You know what I mean? It is what it is.
Wow.
I couldn't.
Wow.
I say that because
that applies to all, not just women. Why is that such a dirty word?
I say that because for a male to seek female advice or females advice or counseling, they would have to have some type of submit. They have to submit themselves to that counseling. You understand what I'm saying? And some guys it's hard to submit to a female, period. You know what I mean?
So you don't have to submit to me in counseling, and we're gonna have to, Terrell. We're already out on 20, so that submit, we'll have to do that another time.
we can spend some time.
Chris, it's called surrender. Chris, it's called surrender, not submit.
Go. So it's called
surrender, Chris.
It's called being vulnerable.
Okay.
A lot of men have a difficult time being vulnerable. And because we think in order to be vulnerable, we have to be soft. So in order to be vulnerable, you have to be brave as hell. That is the most, to me, like, fascinating and honorable thing you can do is be vulnerable, right? We can even go into yoga and how that looks, right? We think soft. Yoga is a warrior science. It was for warriors. So I
think it's because our vulnerability has often been used against us. That's why. In every way that we can be and have been vulnerable, it's often used against us as men to say that we aren't a certain type of man because of it. That's why.
Yeah.
We're judged. We're judged because of it. So that would cause you to suppress, your vulnerability.
Yeah. So we have to start creating, right? We have to start creating a safe space. And so I work with women. I do circles and retreats because safe space is what we need. Men need it too, but the creation of safe space. And so I challenge, or I support you all, Terrell, and what you're doing here is you're creating the safe space,
the
conversation, right? I also, I know my limits. So it was Male Health Awareness Month, and I do the programming at a spa. And I said, hey, let's have an event where it's only male instructors, only males in the class. And then it grew into, now we have life coaches and men that, are therapists. They had a circle, right? So they started with some fitness, then they went into yoga. Men 17 to 75 never done yoga, doing yoga together. Then they sat and they talked. And the owner was like, she's a woman. She's like, Vashti, do you think we should go with? No, we need to fall back. We need to allow them their safe spaces. So you guys have to create that. It is going to take generations, and it's going to take intention, right? It's going to take intention for you all to create the safe space. And yeah, the outliers will continue to judge or poke to find the weakness, but then that becomes, how are you picking or selecting or engaging the people that are in your circle? But I really do believe that when you really stand in your truth intentionally, honestly, fully owning it, not judging yourself, that those are the people that will come around you, or the people will get on board. When I tell
Mm-hmm.
you the changes that I like, the changes from 3-5 years ago, literally people are either on board, but I live in my truth. I walk in it. Even on those days when I question, I sit and say, what are you questioning?
Mm-hmm.
Triggers are amazing. Got triggered the other day. I had to sit with, why was I triggered? Because it wasn't about the other person. It was all about me. I was triggered. Do the work, Vashti. Do the work, G. Do the work, T. And then it will come out in truth all around us. We're all
Okay.
vulnerable. Nobody wants to have their weaknesses poked, not even women.
Hey, I don't
But
know what's going on with my laptop. It just, I don't know, it keep going in and out. I'm sorry. I'm on my
yeah,
phone, so I'm good.
yeah. But the guy who I've taken as a client, when he came to me, he was like, I just surrender. He was like, he was tired of everything that was going on. It was that chaotic energy. You know, we're on the phone for an hour. He's telling me in all these situations. I said, finally, you don't have to tell me anymore. You're chaos right now. So everywhere you go is chaos. And and you know, and he was like, I surrender. And you know, it took a point where his house was about to go in foreclosure.
Oh
So
wow.
that's a point where you just like, fuck, what do I do now? And when I tell y'all, literally, so this is, I do regular life coaching, health, wellness coaching, but spiritual coaching. I literally said to this man, when's the, you know, and y'all are funny, but I said to him, basically, just, you need to meditate and you need to call on spirits that can help you. We try and do too much in this plane. And you can look at science and spirituality, it's the same shit. And I said, you need to set up an altar and you need to meditate just for 3 minutes. This was on a Friday and a Monday. We had a session. On Tuesday, he meditated for 5 minutes, sent an email to the bank, and he screenshotted, they sent him an email back. They had taken his house out of foreclosure.
Oh, wow.
But the man, he had to surrender. He had to surrender so he could hear. And not just hear me. So that's why I said it doesn't need to be submission, because with the work that I do, it's not about you listening to me. It's about you having a safe space to be quiet and listen to yourself. And a lot of times we lie to ourselves because it's easy. Yeah, I was right. I said the right thing. Oh, it was about her. She said this to me, so I said this about. No, when you get quiet, your life is about your decisions and about how you're responding and what you're putting out.
Well, I'm after this pod, I'm not going to speak another word for a whole week, and hopefully, when I do talk again, my electric bill, my, you know what I mean, my rent, everything is going to be, you know, everything is going to be taken care of. You know what I mean?
Your whole life, huh? Your whole life should change, huh?
I'm just
Oh,
joking. You
yeah,
know,
say thank you,
I'm
Vashti.
So, hey, Vash, I got a question now. I know the answer to this, but just for Gladiator and Chris, and for everybody watching, what is the difference between submitting and surrendering?
Why, sir? Sir? Sir.
because
I
we
need to
need to
know.
know. We need to
I
know.
definitely need to know.
We need to
Sir?
know.
Sir. You are, oh, I'm
Uh,
going to talk to you for a week. Don't text me. Don't call me. Uh, whew. So surrendering is, surrendering is being open. It's being open to what you don't even know. Submitting to me is, in surrendering, you don't release your power. You're just now open to other powers. Submitting means I have deemed you here and I am here. Now you can, you know what? You can submit and not be submissive. It's just like I can run and not be a runner. So the act of submitting is saying, hey, you have more knowledge, more power on this. So I submit to your answer here. But being submissive means that you deem someone else a higher power than yourself. And so I will never be submissive. And it's funny because, right, when I say that, men automatically think she's argumentative, she's not a team player, she's not soft. But when you think about slavery and the fact that they were submissive, just because you're submissive don't mean you soft. It don't mean you're a team player, and it does not mean you're not argumentative. But because we're taught, right? We're always taught to be divisive here in this country as Black people. If she's not submissive, then she's negative. And I can't be with her because I can't lead. I'm a goddess. I come from a lineage of priestesses. We are powerful. Why, as a goddess, would I submit and tell someone that they're higher power than I am? It does not. That is not my journey. I have no problem with people that are submissive, and I have no problem with men that need submissive women. I prefer a man who needs a goddess, who wants someone who is right next to him, not someone that says, I understand that you, because you are male, you have to be above me. Because, you know, we can't use submissive when we want. If you're submissive, it's not, oh, he's a great leader, now I'm submissive. Submissive is a mindset. It doesn't change when it works and when it doesn't work, or when you agree with him. And when, you know, if you're submissive, whether you agree with his shit or not. So that I don't come from that lineage. I come from a lineage of loving. I love you. I'm soft. I hear you. I'm supporting you. I am nurturing you. I am pouring into you. I am sensual with you. But that does not mean that I'm going to submit to you.
So who do you feel is the leader of your household?
We are.
We as in you and your husband?
Yes. His strengths, I let him lead with his strengths. My strengths, he lets me lead with my strengths. And it comes together to create a beautiful balance.
That's called harmony.
That's harmony.
Exactly. That's cool.
That's harmony.
That's the way, because submission causes a struggle there, because it causes two people to be, you know, it's a challenge.
But
it
like
becomes
you said,
challenging.
But like you said earlier, that kind of balance is rare. Things are rarely balanced, right?
But
which how most households are. If most households are rarely balanced, then there has to be someone that has to lead the household if that other, whether it's the male or the female, is not on the same is not in the same vibration.
This is where we put work outside of ourselves. If there is not that harmony, why is there not that harmony? Can y'all two do the inner work to create that harmony, instead of saying, you know what, we're not doing the work, so one of us got to be here and one of us got to be here? How about we really, and we really have got to start going within to do that inner work, like
playing our position.
Yeah, we keep pushing it off on things outside of ourselves. There is nothing outside of you. Like, people be like, be my peace. First, you be your own fucking peace. I don't see anything outside of me that I don't have within myself.
Don't ask for shit you can't afford to give yourself. Don't have standards higher than you.
I don't know. We kind of asking for a lot when we asking to not have a leader in the household, because you run into the argument of what are the male and female roles in the house. You understand what I'm saying? Financially,
Well, if
what
you're
are the
already
roles in the
playing your
house?
role, if you're already playing your role, that's not a question. That's not even an argument. If you're already playing your role, and that's what she's trying to say. You play your position and you allow her to play hers. That's the harmony there. No word has to. There doesn't have to
But
be a word for that or a title for that.
who defines what those positions are? Who defines what those
You
positions are?
don't.
Because if I'm the male in the household and I feel like that I should be the leader of the household, say I make more money financially, I'm more of the disciplinarian. I fixed most of the things around the house. I'm expecting her to cook the dinner. I'm expecting her to, to patch up the wounds if one of the kids is bleeding. I'm able to do all of those things, but I have to worry about doing all these other things. You understand what I'm saying? And I can't play both roles. So how do you define what role is whose when it comes to male and female roles within the household to gain that balance?
I think every household has to determine, or just like with every relationship, right? Or, every business partner, when you come to an agreement, you come with your strengths and what you are good at and how, you are going to pour into this relationship in this household. I don't think that because someone makes the financial, makes the brunt of the money that makes them the leader.
Because that don't mean you're good at managing it. That don't mean you're good at managing it just because you
That's
make
true.
it.
That's
Yeah,
true.
and now you're high. Now we got a hierarchy,
Mm-hmm.
and that doesn't serve anybody but the one up here. Hierarchies,
Yep.
and so my goal is not to push my power. That's usually ego. That's usually ego. And I've had ego. I love, I listen to some of the old songs we listen to where you got somebody strung out and it's like that's a power move. That's ego. I no longer that doesn't serve me anymore. But I get it. And that's why I said I don't have but when we talk about real submission, you're talking about even when you really don't agree, even if somebody's going left, that you
You
have
go
to
with it.
go with it. And I
Yeah, you drown with the ship.
mm-mm, that's not who I am. That's not in my bloodline. But I still love and I still hear. I want to listen to you. I want you to have your goals and dreams too. But I cannot. I surrender my heart. I surrender my heart. I do not surrender my will.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And you mentioned something else, expectations. That's something that has to be learned. That's an important topic too, expectations, right? Because and I think it's Rumi in Buddhism or somebody Hinduism is like expectations is the root of suffering, right? Because you're not in what's real or what's present. You're in a constraint that your mind, a construct that your mind has created, and it might not be real, right?
And it sets you up for failure.
Your filter is based on your history, it's based on what you've been taught, but it might not be what's real. But that's a whole nother.
Yeah, true. We can go on with these subjects forever. I'm telling you, because I got all the questions in the world, and I'm going to stir up all the controversy in the world too. I
I
like to
love
give
it.
pushback to everything. I'm telling you, I give pushback to everything. I want to, because that's the only way to gain an understanding of things. To have
Yep.
an actual argument and a debate about things. So the different personalities can coincide and things of that nature. So yeah, it's great.
Especially when you're
I love
first,
it.
like you're hearing some stuff for the first time. But all I really believe when we really sit silently, can I ask, do you both meditate?
I do.
Good, good.
I do, and I have different ways of meditation.
Okay.
I believe that just when you're in a quiet room and you're sitting there, you may put your phone down for a few minutes. Whether it's just a few minutes, you don't necessarily have to close your eyes, but you're deep in your own thought. You're talking to yourself because when most of us talk to ourselves all the time. So I'm having inner battles with myself all the time, and decision making, and and trying to control my emotions and control my feelings towards certain things and stuff like that. So I'm in constant meditation all the time.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say, because most of the things, like even when you're debating, the answers you kind of, I'm curious as to that, but most of the answers we all really know deep within. And you're right, there's so many different types of meditation. You can dance and meditate. Sometimes you'll see somebody running and they're zoned out at that point. Meditation, honestly, is really you stealing this, you're quieting the excess noise, right? Yeah. And you're going in here. So yeah, I just asked because sometimes, we definitely want to hear more perspectives, etc. But a lot of the answers we already know. We just won't quiet ourselves enough to hear them. Yeah, I always say prayer is talking to God. Meditation is listening to the divine.
I so wish your partner was on here so that I can ask her what kind of spells I could use to put on some people and things of that nature. You know what I mean? I need some spells.
So she's the bruja. I know spell work too, but I only spell work I will sell and do for people is spell work on their damn selves.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, the bruja got you. You gotta get the bruja. This conversation might have gone a little differently with the bruja.
It's cool. Us men would have took control of it and got it under control. I'm joking. I'm joking, by the way. Great combo though. Great combo. Yeah. Great combo.
It is. It definitely has been. We can go ahead and wrap this up. Tune in next week where we ask Vash about polygamy.
Oh my God. Y'all gonna have to. I know you all way in Atlanta. But you're gonna have to. We might have to fly you up. We might have to flew you out or whatever not, so you can come sit with us in the studio or whatever not.
We definitely should. And it's polyamory. Thank you, sir. Polyamory.
That's my bad. That's what I meant to say. That's what I meant to say. My bad. That's what I meant to say. My bad.
Anyway, you guys are amazing. I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing, having a conversation, for the fathers that you are. I am honored, and I love you, and I mean that deeply. So thank you.
Thank you.
I love you too.
I can't say that because I'm under a contract called marriage. So
no, literally for real. That's just how I move. I move in love.
I understand.
It makes me so grateful. My heart is so full every fucking day.
That's beautiful. So that's beautiful. And I'll be checking out y'all show too. I'm trying to learn. So I'll be checking y'all out.
Okay.
If you check our show, we real toxic on ours. You know what I mean?
Okay.
We goes crazy. So
I'll have my sage and my Palo Santo burning while I watch.
Yeah.